This is the OFN Today on the Our Football Network. As we recap Week 16 in the NFL, we'll also talk a little bit college football. Of course, coming up is the college football playoffs, the top two picks, presumably, in the NFL Draft 2021 going head-to-head. It's actually going to be Trevor Lawrence, we know for sure, is the first pick. Now, whether Fields is or not, that is still to be debated, but he might be. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's coming up this week. Notre Dame and Alabama, two of the top programs in the history of college football, going head-to-head as well. But we have so much to talk about in the NFL. It's crazy, as we have one more game to go before it's the final weekend, and then it's off to the playoffs, Ryan.
Yeah, maybe for the NFC East, they'll actually have a playoff team. I don't know. Maybe somebody will actually step up and grab that spot, Greg.
Well, 6 wins now might actually get it done.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. And I gutlessly gave up on the Cowboys. My pick, and you were mocking me like 7 weeks ago, and I was like, I think the Cowboys are still the best team. And then I forget which loss it was. I gutlessly gave up on them, and now I'm back to thinking they probably will be the team that emerges. But guess that matters who plays quarterback for Washington. The whole division really hinges on that, I think.
Yeah. And that's, of course, the big story for today. And it's just crazy because last week when I heard that he went to a strip club and he got fined and so forth, that the first thing, and everybody was talking about him going to the strip, everybody was talking about COVID. You're going to, you're putting, and I understand why. I get it. But it was sort of like the strip club thing was like secondary. So here's the captain of one of your captains of your football team is going to a strip club at this time of the season. It's possibly going to be the start of this week. What are you doing going to a strip club? So that just shows you where we are in society today. It's like so commonplace now for these guys to go to strip clubs at this time of the season now. But I couldn't even understand how Haskins was given the opportunity to start this week after he was fined, after the reprimands from the team, the deserved reprimands, taking his captaincy away, and then they just let him start instead of giving the start to Heineke. I was shocked by that. But then, he got what the Washington football team got what they deserved, and then they went ahead and kicked him off the team anyway.
It's amazing. It just goes to show you that even Ron Rivera, one of the most moral coaches in the NFL, even he, you have to win the games, right? That's what they're paid to do. That's what they're paid millions to do. And so he started the guy he thought gave him the best chance to win, even though he clearly didn't respect Dwayne Haskins. Haskins hadn't done anything to earn respect. He clearly didn't like him. He didn't want anything to do with him, but he looked at his two choices, Dwayne Haskins, who has talent, and Taylor Heineke, who was a street free agent, not even on the roster if not for Kyle Allen's injury. And honestly, I had to look up who their backup quarterback was when I realized Alex Smith wasn't playing. Not expecting him to play, just like, who is their backup quarterback right now?
He actually had a very good career. I think it's pronounced Heineke. He had a very good career, I think, as at Old Dominion. He put up some big numbers there. I think it was like the year they just entered FBS football. It was like his last year there, I think. He put up good numbers on the FCS level, so he should be a backup in the NFL.
He started a couple games for Carolina. He's probably a third stringer. I don't know if he should be
possibly,
a backup.
Sure.
But either way, so it just goes to show you that coaches under the gun go with the best player. Fine Haskins, suspend Haskins, strip his captaincy, whatever you want to do. They needed to win a game. You put the best player out there, and it ends up that, he didn't play well. He avoided the media after the game, another immature decision, and finally they just had enough, and they said, you're gone, which I think cutting him with one game left in the season, you could have just cut him in January, I think goes to show how little, again, I'll come back to the word respect, how little respect there was in that organization for Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, and while you're talking, I decided to queue up some highlights of Haskins, maybe the best half of football, or the best 2 quarters of football he had with the team was week 1 when they trailed the Eagles 17-0, and he led them to the comeback there. even though he started the game, so it wasn't like he came off the bench or anything like that. But he's actually is a trivia name now. You know, who's the quarterback who threw the first touchdown pass for the Washington football team?
Yeah.
So so I'm sure Washington football fans will love to remember that.
And it's like, who was the third quarterback? Name the 3 quarterbacks picked in the first round of the 2018 draft, right? It's like, all these years later, it's like, who was picked name the 5 quarterbacks picked in the 2011 first round of the draft. So, Cam Newton was the #1 pick. And then it's like, Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder.
Nobody's going to know any of that.
Yeah, well, that's my point. In 10 years, it's going to be like Kyler Murray, obviously, who was the first pick. Awesome. Then Daniel Jones, right? He hung around for a little while. He was, up and down. And then who was the third guy? And it's going, Dwayne Haskins. He's been out of the league for like 9 years.
Yeah, he's going to be the only fan base who will remember that will be the Washington fan base.
He's plummeted to Jamarcus Russell depths. That's how far he's fallen.
Yep. And by the way, this also is it again shows you that coaches there's not an exact science when you are at practice. There is no science to that, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, because they sit there. How many times do we sit there? We go, you're sticking with this guy, you're sticking with that guy because he looks better in practice. And then the guy who comes off the bench who doesn't look as good in practice plays better than the guy who played better in practice.
Yeah.
Happens a lot.
Yeah, it does.
So
here's the crazy thing, Greg. I tweeted at Elias, hoping for them to find it because I just don't have the time. If Washington starts Heineke and wins, they'll have started 4 quarterbacks and made the playoffs. If Washington loses and Dallas beats the Giants, they'll have started 4 quarterbacks and made the playoffs.
Wow.
If Washington starts Smith, they'll still have played 4 quarterbacks and made the playoffs. I want to know if if there's ever been a playoff team who has had 4 different starting quarterbacks. That is this week's mission. I have to find that out.
I would have to say no. I think that's
I've had examples tweeted at me in the last 12 hours or so of teams that have had 3, but no one has been able to find
4
teams
is a big number. Yeah,
it really is. If you have 4 starting quarterbacks, you suck if you have 4 starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, look, they didn't have McLaurin in the game either. That was already a bad deal. They got Gibson returned. I get the feeling that Rivera, because remember, we even talked about this scenario a couple weeks ago. I forget which team that we talked about it with and which quarterback situation. Oh, it was the Giants. Remember, we were saying, well, should you play Daniel Jones, or should you say, what, let's just wait another week or 2. If you lose this game, you lose the game, whatever. So Rivera, I think if that was week 17, Alex Smith played. I really do. I think Alex Smith would have played.
Alex Smith is somewhat of a unique circumstance, right? Because you don't want to force him to play when he's not, you're dealing with more than his football career. So I think you kind of leave it to Alex Smith, and if he tells you he can play, then you play him. But you kind of let him make that decision more than you do as most times as a coach. I do want to say this about Haskins before we move on. Hold on, let me pat myself on the back right here. If you want to read something interesting, I set out when this was May 2018. April 2018. I set out to do I was working at NJ.com in the Star Ledger, and I set out to do a Dwayne Haskins homecoming piece. Thought the Giants might pick him, 6th overall. He was from New Jersey, moved to Maryland to go to high school as a freshman. And I said, I'm going to do something on the first 13 years of this kid's life. I'd seen 100 stories on, his Ohio State years and his Maryland years. Forgive me, Greg.
It's okay.
His Ohio State years and his Maryland teen years. I said, let me do something on his first 12 years. And couldn't really find anything. Couldn't find people who wanted to talk about him. couldn't find out where he went to high school for the first half of his freshman year. Called all the high schools. I have tons of sources in New Jersey. Called trainers. Called friends. And it was the strangest story I ever investigated, the strangest story I ever reported. Just he moved around. He had 4 or 5 different addresses in New Jersey before he moved. Neighbors vaguely remembered him. And what emerged from what was going to be a fluffy homecoming piece was just kind of a story about raised some red flags about how he grew up and bounced around and was coddled. And I finally got his dad on the phone. His dad chewed me out and told me that he was the source for all information on his son.
Okay.
And people out there had selfish narratives, son, and anybody that he didn't approve of quoted in the story. He just tried to control the whole process, and I was like, this is a major red flag. So
sure.
I wrote the story on the son, and then I wrote a story on the dad because he became such a big part of it. And sure enough, 2 years later, you see what we expect from from a son who is coddled by his family. We see, Pop Warner coaches were declining comment on the family. Like, what Pop Warner coach declines comment on a kid he coached who's going to the NFL? If you called Kyler Murray's Pop Warner coach, he's going to tell you 10 stories about the kid leaping over somebody and the time we were down 35 and he led us back. That's what I was looking for. And right there, it was a red flag on Dwayne Haskins' maturity level. And I think 2 years later, we've seen that those maturity concerns have played themselves out.
And that's why there's a new, Ron Rivera is new, but there's the old regime, and of course the owner's still there, but who was ever making that football decision is no longer there.
Well, correct. No, I mean, I think the owner made that football decision. I think that's part of the problem.
That's the thing. We don't really know, but you're right. It could have been, and that is the problem.
It's very well known that Jay Gruden and coaches did not want Dwayne Haskins. Whether Bruce Allen wanted him, I can't say. But enough people who know Jay Gruden have said to me that Jay Gruden and his coaching staff did not want Dwayne Haskins. It's forced on him from above, whether that's Dan Snyder or Bruce Allen, I couldn't tell you. But do know Dwayne Haskins went to high school with Dan Snyder's son, so they're probably connected.
And look, if you're a Washington fan, this is like the Giants or the Cowboys. As bad as the records have been, there's still a chance for a postseason. So you might as well. Your positioning in the draft isn't going to change much. So you might as well play a playoff game. Especially, you get some young players, a little bit of playoff experience, whatever. That's still a nice thing. For Washington, at least Dallas, they can go back to Dak Prescott gets healthy. The Giants, they're still going to hope Daniel Jones is their man. Washington's in a different situation now. Washington is definitely one of those teams that you would have to believe will target one of those quarterbacks in the first round.
Correct. They might actually be better off not making the playoffs as an organization. Get the higher pick. What I read, Field Yates over at ESPN did the math. The Giants can pick as high as third in the draft. If they lose and a bunch of other teams win, they can pick as high as number 3, right behind Jacksonville and the Jets, and as low as number 19 is if they
that's huge for the Giants. Yeah.
I mean, that is an enormous gap. So
yeah, because where is let's see, Washington? Well, Dallas is 9. So where is Washington?
Giants are 8. Right?
They must.
Washington's 19 because they're the division
that's right.
leader.
Okay, so if Washington, I'm wondering. I guess Washington then would become 9 if Dallas got in.
Yeah, I mean it depends on how everything else goes, but
the Giants
one of those teams,
Giants are 13.
One of those teams is going to pick 19.
Okay.
Whoever wins the division, goes to 19.
That's true. So the division winner definitely is the one, but the Giants they have the biggest one, the biggest difference. But no question, you're right. It is. You're talking about possibly getting maybe the 7th, 8th, 9th pick if you're Washington or Dallas, and it's a 10, maybe 8 to 10 spots. That's significant.
But I think we don't always know about first, we don't always know. We know players try to win games. We don't know if organizations would rather lose to get the number one overall pick. But I think we do know that playoffs or no playoffs, the organization wants to make the playoffs.
Absolutely.
There's some. No one in the organization wants to be. Oh, we're gonna fall from. We're gonna try. We'd be better off losing to pick 8th rather than 19th. No one thinks that way, even if that's the case.
And I don't think the Giants have to worry about that. The way that they've been playing,
the Giants are not beating the Cowboys.
Not the way that they've been playing. See, it's interesting because all three teams had their like little runs over the past couple of months. It's just that the Cowboys are having it at the best time, but that doesn't mean that once you pluck Alex Smith back into the lineup, that doesn't change, because I think it will. That's a significant change. He is shown to be a big leader for that franchise. He was playing excellent before the injury.
Yeah, he can play. That's the number one thing, right? Like, why is Andy Dalton? Why are the Cowboys playing well? Because Andy Dalton can play. Alex Smith can play. Like, Dwayne Haskins really can't play. Taylor Meineke might not be able to play.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones, we don't know if he can play. Alex and Andy Dalton have hung around for 15 years in the NFL because they can play. That's why.
So the Cowboys definitely the bet there over the Giants. And Washington, they get the Sunday night game. I'm okay with that. I would have preferred. I think overall the best team matchup is Arizona and the Rams, and we'll get into that in a little bit because that's also very significant. But this is a division title. It's the Eastern teams. There's a lot of ratings being drawn there from those teams, especially whoever wins. Dallas, New York will be tuned into the game, so I get why they're doing it. But the Eagles, they were just being a little overrated the last couple of weeks because everybody was getting on Hurts and they were all excited about Jalen Hurts, but they can't stop anybody, the Eagles, and they're just not a very good football team right now. So
no, he makes a lot of mistakes as you would expect a rookie early in his 3 or 4 games into his tenure to make. He makes a lot of forced decisions and buying time the way he can actually only buy some more time to make a bad decision. So, no, look, I think Washington probably wins the division because the Eagles. Look, did you hear the J.J. Watt quote on why players should play hard even when they had nothing to play for? Did you hear this quote?
Maybe I don't think so.
You go find it, and everyone listening, go find it. Go find the J.J. Watt quote about why players should give effort in Week 17. It is an awesome. When did
he say this?
Yesterday after the game. It's Schefter tweeted it. It is an awesome 2 minutes worth of quote. Fantastic. About how you're out there playing for the guys who buy your jerseys, the guys who you're making millions to play a children's game. It was just like, honestly, it was something I would say or you would say that he said. He just basically said what we all know to be true, which is like, if you can't come in here and work hard to go out there and play football and make $20 million a year, then there's something wrong with you. And so it was just an awesome quote. And I bring it up because I kind of worry what the Eagles' motivation is going to be. Sunday night, they know they're eliminated. It's 4 hours after everybody's game. They just want to pack their lockers and go home, lick their wounds. I could see that game being 28-0 Washington. Like, I could see a really listless Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Effort.
I mean, Jalen Hurts and some of the other younger players are going to try hard. This is their moment, but you have a lot of veteran players.
Yeah. You might have a lot of veterans get calf injuries in practice this week.
So was that a quote or a video clip?
It was a video clip.
Okay. All right, so I tell you what. If it's a video clip, then I will stop this show right now and insert the clip after the show so the audience can actually get an opportunity to watch it. So if it's out there, I'll insert it.
Will y'all be able to kind of regroup and hope to finish the season on a positive note next week?
We're professional athletes getting paid a whole lot of money. If you can't come in and put work in the building, go out to the practice field and work hard, do your lifts and do what you're supposed to do, you should not be here. This is a job. We are getting paid a whole lot of money. There are a lot of people that watch us and invest their time and their money into buying our jerseys and buying a whole bunch of, and they care about it. They care every single week. We're in week 16 and we're 4-11. And there's fans that watch this game, that show up to the stadium, that put in time and energy and effort and care about this. So if you can't go out there and you can't work out, you can't show up on time, you can't practice, you can't want to go out there and win, you shouldn't be here, because this is a privilege. It's the greatest job in the world. You get to go out and play a game. And if you can't care enough, even in week 17, even when you're trash, when you're 4-11, if you can't care enough to go out there and give everything you've got and try your hardest, that's how I think there are people every week that still tweet you, that still come up to you and say, hey, we're still rooting for you. We're still behind you. They have no reason whatsoever to. We stink. But they care, and they still want to win, and they still want you to be great. That's why. Those people aren't getting paid. We're getting paid handsomely. That's why.
We are back from taking a look at the clip of J.J. Watt, and I can't wait to take a look at it myself. And actually, I guess I just did. Okay, so let's talk about, because there's so much to talk about. I was surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be, because a lot of times what I think is pretty important usually isn't very important to the national media. But I think one of the most important things to talk about this week was the combination of what happened at Liberty and what happened in Las Vegas. Now, maybe because it happened at Liberty in Las Vegas and it didn't happen to Clemson and, the Pittsburgh Steelers, nobody's talking about it. Because I said this about a month ago, and I forget, it might have been, who knows, might have been after, but that was probably after that weekend of the college team doing it and then the pro team doing it. The Falcons, and I forget the college team who did it. So, and basically I said, I knew this is going to come back to haunt these coaches one of these days. It's going to come back to haunt them. I don't like what this is doing. It's setting up a bad precedent. So sure enough, let's take a look at what happened, because I'm not so sure everybody, or most everybody, especially NFL fans, probably didn't get an opportunity to see this clip of Liberty. So it's a tie game here. You see what's going on here. Basically, Coastal Carolina is allowing Liberty to score. Now, it's interesting, on 1st and goal, I don't have this clip because they didn't show it. 1st and goal, the kid basically just sat there. He didn't move, and then he put his knee down. I thought that's what was going to happen all 3 downs. So then, on 2nd and down, for some reason, the kid decides to run a little bit forward, and then everybody's pushing him, sort of like what happened in the Atlanta game, pushing Todd Gurley over the goal line. But then the kid fumbles, and Coastal Carolina recovers, and Liberty can't even try to score. That's it. It went to overtime. The main reason I had a problem with this in college is Hugh Freeze has got to know what he's dealing with. He's dealing with teenagers. He's dealing with young kids. He has to make it as simple as possible for the kids. What it means is, no, don't tell them what you're doing and, do this. Hey, you know what? Victory formation, whatever. Just take a knee. They know how to do that. Take 3 knees in a row, and then we'll kick the field goal and get it over with. He must have not conveyed that properly. I can't imagine the kid just decided, I'm going to run the ball in the end zone after I took a knee the play before.
It almost looked like he was afraid of getting popped. Like if he just and I don't blame him. That's not like a knock on him. But like if he just stands there like a sitting duck, that somebody's just going to come and bury their helmet in his ribs or whatever. You don't want to just be standing still on a football field. You don't. It's kind of like being a car standing still at an intersection. The guy coming up behind you could ram into you. So it almost looked like that's why I think he started moving forward, because he's like, I don't want to just stand here like that seems dangerous, so I'll at least move my feet a little bit. But yes, you're right. Victory formation is the obvious solution. Don't know why they didn't do it.
So Hugh Freeze, of course, his name he's not going anywhere this year again. And I'm okay with that. I think Hugh Freeze needs a little bit more time before maybe he never gets back to the top college ranks. I don't know. He's a real good coach. We know that. But look, I mean, his recruiting, and we know there were a lot of bad things that went on there, but did he bring a lot of good athletes to Ole Miss for a few seasons.
Yeah.
But we know it wasn't all legal.
Yeah. Well, how did he bring them there? Yeah.
So anyway, it's really something how Liberty was still able to win this football game, all things considered, because normally you lose that football game. And you got to believe Hugh Freeze. I don't know what he said afterwards, whatever, but because he's not going to probably admit it anyway, but he must have been so relieved, because that would have gone down as one of the biggest blunders a coach could ever make. But he got lucky. Anyway, so then let's now take a look at the Las Vegas play. Now, what led to it was the 3rd and 1. Kyle Van Noy jumps off sides. How many times these defenders jump off sides when you know what the team is trying to get them to do is a completely different story we could talk about. But then, here we go. Josh Jacobs stops before the 1-yard line. 3rd and goal, 1:04 to go. And then by time the field goal, here's the thing. By time he kicks the field goal, there's 20 seconds left. So that means at about 1:04, the decision's got to be one of two things. I am going to punch this in. I feel a lot better if I score a touchdown here with 1:04 left. They have no timeouts left. They got to go the entire distance of the field and score a touchdown with no timeouts. Or I do what he did. And I don't know. I mean, to me, it's a lot harder in the NFL to try and score a touchdown with a minute left and no timeouts than it is to put yourself in a situation where there's 20 seconds left and all you got to do is get 30 yards, 35 yards to be in field goal range. I don't know. I mean, I think John Gruden won't do that again.
I think you're on those 2 points. I think you're right. A minute to go, no timeouts, touchdown is much harder than 20 seconds on a field goal. Much harder, as we saw, obviously, with the way that
one pass that was it, and a penalty.
Yeah, the penalty was the killer. Yeah, the penalty was the killer. I don't know for sure that they make the game-winning field goal without the extra 15 yards.
Yeah, you're right, because they have no timeouts. Yeah.
Yeah, they got to run another play, get down, spike it. The penalty, which also stopped the clock, I think, is the absolute killer.
Yep. And that was really a crazy. That was one of the. I mean, if that would have been on Sunday night, that's all anybody would have been talking about this morning. But what happens on a Sunday morning compared to a Monday morning is we all know, whether it's general political news or sports, it's completely different. But that was just an incredible last 4 minutes, 5 scores in 4 minutes and 1 second. The back and forth was just amazing. Ryan Fitzpatrick might have sealed himself as the best backup quarterback in the history of the NFL. But it was just an amazing ending.
It's a great question. Is he the best backup quarterback? He's made so many starts though too. Like, it depends. What's your definition of a backup quarterback? Like,
well, you're definitely the number 2. You're not the number 1 for sure.
But like, he's made how many starts in his career?
I'm okay with that. It's sort of like, and isn't it interesting that one of the best backup quarterbacks?
He's made 146 starts and only come off the bench 19 times. Is that a backup quarterback?
Well, I'm not looking at it as career backup. Let's put it that way. I'm looking at it as sort of like what you would say is, hey, because I'm not looking at it as the greatest quarterback of all time. You're going to look at his whole career. So, yeah, we'd have to put it into 2 different categories. If you wanted a backup quarterback on your team and you were a championship caliber team, which would be the backup quarterback you would want based on the fact that he's had success as a backup in his career.
Gotcha.
And Don Strock is the perfect example.
He'd be in my top 5. Who's the perfect example?
Don Strock, who also played with the Dolphins and also started football games for Miami, and yet seemed to be a lot bigger of a figure when he came off the bench.
Yeah. I would say Fitzpatrick's in my top 5. There's a couple others, right? If I go really far back, you're going to have to help me here because it's before my time. But wasn't was Earl Morrall, right? Was Johnny Unitas's backup,
Yes.
right?
Well, they were back and forth, but actually, yeah, it was Earl Morrall who actually did end up starting though for that season or two. Yeah, but it was they kind of you could put him in there, sure.
Yeah, I would put him in there. Obviously, Nick Foles and Jeff Hostetler won Super Bowls as backup quarterbacks. They would have to be in there. I mean,
absolutely.
Look, Foles won a Super Bowl MVP. Hostetler was kind of just along for the ride.
Yeah.
Foles won a Super Bowl MVP, so for me, he's certainly in there. He outdueled Tom Brady in a Super Bowl. He has to be in my top 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at that because even Johnny Unitas, obviously, that was way before my time. And when you have to look up, historical stats, and I remember. Well, when I look at all those films, okay, the Jets and what they did with the Colts and winning that Super Bowl, and all I see was an old man coming off the bench and Johnny Unitas for the last couple of minutes. I had no idea that 3 years later he would be in the Super Bowl again with the Colts to win a championship over Dallas. I'm like, I thought he was an old man who was like on his last legs. That's what you were led to believe in the highlight. But it's interesting. Then what I did was I looked at stats, and I spent about a good hour taking a look at stats of quarterbacks back in the day. It is amazing that guys like Johnny Unitas and all these great quarterbacks, their completion percentage was terrible.
Yeah. Totally different.
Yeah, it was like 50%. Everybody laughs at Joe Namath having like a terrible completion percentage. Johnny Unitas wasn't that much better.
No, it was a different game. You could hold guys and, bump guys and stuff.
It's amazing the difference.
If you breathe on a receiver now, it's interference.
I know.
And then we can't have this conversation, of course, without mentioning the guy he's in the Hall of Fame, and he was a backup quarterback for 6-7 years. 2 of them, really. Kurt Warner obviously started as a backup cornerback.
Okay.
Came at, no one remembers him as a backup, but if Trent Green doesn't get hurt, Kurt Warner, is a backup quarterback.
Yep.
And then the guy who I was about to mention, a Hall of Famer, one of the great quarterbacks, certainly of my childhood, Steve Young. He was a backup quarterback for 5 years. You know
Incredible.
what I mean? Who knows what his numbers would be if he, was a starter for those 5 years.
Yep. And that was something that today would never happen.
Never.
Nope. So times have changed. And that's the thing. I feel sorry for guys in a way. Look, Dwayne Haskins is getting everything he's deserved. But guys like, and you could probably even throw Sam Darnold in there and other guys that they don't have a lot of college experience. And then they're thrust into a starter week 1 in the NFL. And if they don't perform very well after a couple of years, it's almost like they're trash.
After 2 years. 2 years you get now.
Yeah.
2 years. People want to move on from Giants fans want to move on from Daniel Jones after 2 years. 2 years?
I know.
Years?
That means we have no Phil Simms. We have no Terry Bradshaw. We can go down the line.
Yeah. I mean, even right now, you'd have no Ryan Tannehill.
Yep.
You'd have no Jared Goff. Some even current quarterbacks who are, good players. Tannehill and Goff aren't, top 10 quarterbacks, but they're good, legitimate NFL players, which I think Daniel Jones could be. They were. If you wrote them off after 2 years, where would they be? So
a couple of other quick things from the Miami game. Andrew Van Ginkel is starting to make a name for himself now. Nice young player. Maybe more of a situational guy, but still, I mean, he is 2 more sacks for Van Ginkel in the game against the Raiders, so we'll keep an eye on him in the future. And Darren Waller, I think he has now officially solidified himself as the second best tight end in the game.
He can't be second. He can't be.
Who's second?
Kelsey Kittle are 1-2. They have to be. I know they've been injured. Kittle's been injured this year. Kelsey Kittle. I agree with you. Waller's I'd put him third. I'd put him third. I agree with you. He's had a great year. He solidified himself as a top tight end. To me, Kelsey Kittle will have to be 1-2.
All right. Now, as far as the playoffs are concerned, might as well we were talking about sticking the AFC for a second. we're talking about Miami and how huge that win was. And right now we have 5 teams, all 10-5. And it could be an 11-win team will not make it with 7 teams making it.
That's amazing, isn't it? Like, imagine the uproar to expand the playoffs if we were still at 6 teams and 2 11-win teams missed the playoffs. They might jump right over 6 and go to 8 if that was the case. If they hadn't already expanded to 7, they might jump right over and go to 8.
Yeah. It's
crazy.
I don't think that's going to happen. Especially after what we've seen the last few weeks, somebody's going to lose. Someone will lose. It just happens. And anybody can lose. And that includes, there's no...
But then you'll have a 10-win team.
What's that?
Then you'll still have a 10-win team that didn't go to the playoffs. And that hasn't happened since your Jets in 2015.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that was the last 10-win team that didn't make it, was your Jets in 2015. Quarterbacked by?
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Of course.
So look, Tennessee at Houston. Deshaun Watson. That is not going to be I didn't even know what to make of the game last night because of the snow. I mean, they're taking a team that probably, they're in Nashville. They don't see the snow very often. And they got to go to Lambeau in the snow. So it's very hard for me to trust whether or not Tennessee just played an awful game if the snow didn't have anything to do with it. But that division now, it's possible one of those 2 teams won't make it. And the Colts defense, which has been so good for them all year, to be up 24-7 to Pittsburgh, the way the Steelers have been playing over the last few weeks offensively, it's amazing that what took place. So how they gave up 21 points in the last 19 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I was thinking of you when that happened because as you know, you've been a huge Colts guy and I've been a huge non-Colts guy all season. And I was thinking.
And the funny thing is, it wasn't about what you would think that most of the media would have. Phillip Rivers, he's too old, and it had nothing to do with the offense. They scored enough points. It was the defense that let him down. And they had 1 sack, no turnovers, when Ben Roethlisberger is throwing the ball 49 times. That's not good for your defense.
So if everybody wins, Indianapolis is the team out, right?
Correct.
If everybody wins, Indy. But if Indy wins and Tennessee loses, Indy wins the division and gets a home game.
Correct. And then Tennessee would need either Miami or Baltimore to lose to make the playoffs.
Oh, that is
yes.
crazy. Who do you think is the team on the outside?
This is just such a crapshoot right now. I'm really starting to be worried. I'm kind of getting worried about my Cleveland Browns now.
That's who I think it is.
Because now all of a sudden Pittsburgh kind of has something a little bit to play for. It's not a lot. It's a little. It's their rivals. So I
think that's who it is.
Because the Cleveland, the whole thing with the Browns that I think I haven't heard anybody mention, which I'm watching the game and I'm going, okay, you got one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. We've talked for the past 2 months about how the rushing has been Baker Mayfield's godsend. And his receivers are out. So what do? They pass the ball for 9 of the first 11 play calls in the game. Pass.
Agree. I think Stefanski got a little bit of Andy Reid early in his disease, early in Andy's career, where he had to prove he was smarter than everybody and do exactly the opposite of what you thought he was going to do. No, Kevin. We get it. You're a good coach. You were going to win Coach of the Year. You don't need to prove to us how smart you are. You think we're going to do this, so we're going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
No, hand it off to Chubb. Hand it off to Hunt. Get out of there with a win. He tried to outsmart everybody, and he got exactly what you do when you think you're the smartest guy in the room. So,
and look, and as far as Mayfield, you can't knock him with the receiver situation, but I'm sure Sam Darnold had probably I'm sure he knew exactly what Baker was going through when he had to go through about a month of this season with the same type of receivers that Mayfield had in that football game. And look what happened. Baker Mayfield didn't exactly have his best game.
It's funny. The two Mayfield-Darnold showdowns, right, was Mayfield beat Darnold when the Browns had lost whatever it was, like 33 of their last 34 games. And then Darnold goes and beats Mayfield when the Jets are the pathetic team. And if I sound angry, I'm angry because
don't tell me that you're
I had the Browns. The Ravens, and the Bucks available. You couldn't play a survivor pool any better than I played it. I had 2 weeks to go and 3 of the best teams in the NFL, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Bucks available. You couldn't play this any better than me. At the end of a survivor pool, you're usually trying to pick like the Chargers or the Texans just to like survive. I had 3 of the best teams available, and I picked the Browns.
The Jets screwed you.
The Jets screwed me. Yep.
So, and the Browns now have to beat their nemesis, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who own the Cleveland Browns. Looking for their first postseason berth since 2002. Maybe it'll help the Browns that nobody will be in the stadium. The pressure might be a little bit less.
I think the team who misses out.
Cleveland? Okay.
Yep.
Now, look, even Baltimore, we thought a week or two ago, it's a win, easy win. I know Baltimore's playing better, but Cincinnati, here's a guy, Brandon Allen, who has taken advantage and has said to everybody, hey, look at me, I can be a good backup. Bring me in, or maybe he stays as Joe Burrow's backup and he can make a little bit more money than he normally would make because the Bengals will pay him more to stay there as a backup.
Yep. Agree.
I would not say that's an easy Baltimore win. And we just had Deshaun Watson against Tennessee. Miami Buffalo will be interesting because what will Buffalo do tonight, first of all, and what will they do next week? Do they care that much about 2-3 seed to play all their starters and not rest them because they have to play with their starters again the following week?
I want to bring something up here NFL-wide that I think is interesting that I, for one, didn't think much of when they expanded the playoffs, and I don't read much about it. But I think we know why to 7 playoff teams, right? For an extra playoff game for the league, right? We know that's why they did it. That was the motivation. But I think they took some of the excitement out of Week 17 because you'd have the Bills, the Steelers, the Saints, the Seahawks, all playing their starters to try to get into the number 2 seed and the bye. And without that, if you've already wrapped up your division, do you really care?
So do you think it should be the exact opposite?
Why?
And there should be more teams getting buys.
Sure, I can say that. It'll never happen because we know why. They did it because of the money. They want more first-round games for the money for the league. But I just think a byproduct of that, right? There's always a cause and effect to everything, right? So I ate a cheeseburger for lunch, so I have $12 less in my pocket, right? There's a cause and effect for everything, and I think by setting up more playoff games next week, you made less games interesting this week because I don't think the Bills, the Steelers should play their guys.
We'll find out.
The one exception, Greg, is the Bucks. I keep reading Brady shouldn't play, Evans, Gronk shouldn't play. I think you're crazy. I think the Bucks have to play everybody in Week 17
because of how they're playing right now.
But no, because there's such an advantage in the NFC to being the 5 seed. Because the 5 seed will go to Washington.
Oh, okay.
There's such an advantage in the NFC.
Absolutely. Yes.
To being 5 seed.
Yes.
You get the NFC East winner versus if you're the 6 seed, you go to Seattle. If you're the 7 seed, you go to New Orleans. Like those are terrible matchups.
Absolutely.
So if you absolutely play for the 5 in the NFC. In the AFC, it doesn't matter, right? Whether you go to Buffalo or Pittsburgh or whatever, I don't think matters. But in the NFC, Tampa's the one team I think has to play everybody.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point, and I don't think that's going to be. I'd be shocked if that wasn't the case. So, Bruce Arians, he's questioned a lot of things he's done, but I don't think he's stupid.
If they lose and LA gets it, and we don't know if LA will because they might not have Jared Goff, but if they lose, and LA wins, LA gets it because LA has the head-to-head tiebreaker against Tampa. So Tampa needs to win.
And that's, of course, the other situation where the Bears have now put themselves in a position thanks to the way Arizona just laid an egg. They gave up, over 300 yards passing to 3 touchdown passes to C.J. Beathard, who only completed 13 passes in the game, but they gave up 183 yards rushing to Jeff Wilson. And DeAndre Hopkins, the big priced wide receiver in the biggest game of the season, was 8 for 48. Murray didn't even throw a touchdown pass in 50 attempts. They had 400 yards of total offense and scored 12 points. So now Chicago, because look, this is a great game because the Packers need the game for the bye. So they are going to play everybody. It's their rivals. We know they're going to play everybody, and the Bears need the win to get into the postseason. So if the Bears win the win, if they lose, they can still get in if the Rams win. So there's still 2 ways for the Bears to get in. So even if they lose, they just got to hope that the Rams beat Arizona, or else the Bears are out. And everybody's talking, Mitch Trubisky. They're not in the position. Look, Trubisky's played better, no question. We talked about that for the last couple of weeks. He's a better quarterback.
He played like a starter.
Yeah, absolutely plays like a starter now. But he's not playing like the number 1 pick in the draft. So people need to calm down. He threw another red zone interception. 2 straight weeks, he throws the ball in the end zone and gets picked off. You can't do that for a year, let alone back-to-back weeks if you're a good quarterback. But they survived. You know what's interesting is the last few weeks when I look at the Bears, I look at their defense, I've been noticing, where's Khalil Mack? Here's this high-priced defender for the Bears. The Bears are they're playing great football. The defense must be doing something. But I couldn't believe it when I actually did the research. Khalil Mack in his last 6 games, if you look at it, what does he have? He's average. Actually, if you think about it, he is averaging only 3 tackles a game the entire season. And over his last 6 games, he has 16 tackles, 1.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and an interception. Now, if you're making that much money and you're supposed to be one of the best defenders in the NFL, you got to give us more unless he's injured.
Agreed. I was thinking to myself recently that I haven't heard his name much this year. It's traditionally the last couple of years been him or Aaron Donald, Defensive Player of the Year. Aaron Donald, you can't go a week without hearing how he dominated a game. And I was thinking, what's happened to Khalil Mack? And it's just he's had a quiet year.
Yep. Yeah. So maybe he is injured. Maybe there's something, he's playing hurt, but it is what it is. And they need to get a lot more out of Khalil Mack if they're actually going to do anything in the postseason. So Seattle, all of a sudden, their defense, you can bring in Dunlap. Jamal Adams is healthy. They have now given up 17 points or less to the last 5 opponents. So now, are they playing the Chiefs every week? No, but it's still a step up to where they were. And now that makes them a dangerous team because there was no way they were going to be a true Super Bowl contender with the defense playing like it did earlier in the season.
But Russell Wilson all of a sudden remember when he was like the no doubt MVP?
Yes, I know.
He's had like 5 terrible games in a row.
Has.
Like this might be the worst stretch of his career.
It is. It probably is.
I know. I mean, I look, if I'm a betting man, I would bet on Russell Wilson before I bet against him, but he has had 5 bad games in a row.
And it's not like, was it playing really good? It's not about that. It's like when I see guys open, he's missing them. It's like, I don't understand what he's doing.
It's alarming. Yeah.
And speaking of great quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, now they're winning games, and he's such a great quarterback that they could still win when he's not playing well. But in his last 3 games, his completion percentage is 59%, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a fumble, and don't forget the ridiculous 30-yard sack against the Dolphins. This has not been one of Patrick Mahomes' better 3-game stretches, and they're still winning football games. But if they're going to repeat, he has got to play better in the postseason.
I wonder how much of it is just he's bored.
It's possible.
I honestly do, right? Like part of being great is that you don't ever get bored with being great, right? Like Peyton Manning never got bored with being great. Aaron Rodgers never seems to get bored with being great. Like part of it is I wonder if like he's just like, okay, I'm this good, our team's this good, like let's just get to the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if he's just not intentionally, not necessarily working hard. If he's just bored, you know what I mean? Like if he's just like, all right, let's get to the games that actually matter.
Yeah.
You know,
and we'll find out for sure when the playoffs begin, and then he's gonna have a week off. So,
yeah,
you probably stand a better chance of beating the Chiefs early, like that first game, if you're actually like a Baltimore, a Tennessee, an Indiana, like a team with talent. To play them right after the bye, after he's been sluggish the last 4 games, that's when you want to get the Chiefs. You don't want him to get on a roll.
Get to the Super Bowl, they get to the Super Bowl, they're winning the Super Bowl.
More than likely. We have a few minutes left. I want to show this quick replay. Now, they don't expand the replay on this clip I'm going to show you, but basically I'm showing you what happened in the Rams-Seattle games. Jared Goff, he's trying to go into the end zone, almost similar to what happened at Baker Mayfield. He fumbles the football. It's clear fumble. And even you see the Seattle guys, they're putting their fingers up. We got the ball. Anyway, as you can see, the next down, 4th and goal, it's 13-6. They get stuffed at the line of scrimmage, down to the 3rd-string running back. Henderson got hurt a couple plays later when Jamal Adams tripped him, injured his ankle. Bottom line is, the reason why they could not do anything with that fumble is because of the clear fumble recovery rule. Now, I have got to ask you, Ryan, when I think about this rule, I don't know, somebody's got to give me a good explanation, because I used to think, this is what I've heard all the time, hey, it's a fumble. Everybody knows it's a fumble, but hey, I don't know who came up with it, so there's nothing I could do about it. What are you talking about? Who came up with it? Who's the guy that came out of the pile with the ball in his hands? Shouldn't they say that that's the guy who gets the ball?
You would think it'd be that easy. Yeah, no. I
really,
agree with
tell
you.
me, what am I missing? There's got to be a reason for it.
On that play, I don't think you're missing
not that
anything.
play, like the recovery rule in general.
Well, the recovery rule in general, I think, is sometimes for the incomplete pass where it's like 2 guys go after, you're not really sure who would go after it if you didn't blow the whistle and stuff like that. When it's in a scrum like that, there should be no, in my opinion, there should be no clear recovery. Whoever comes out of the pile with the ball is the guy who recovered the ball.
Yeah.
I think that's more for like when the ball is rolling around the turf that you would fall back on that. I was very surprised to see that. The play you're talking about? Very surprised.
Yeah, because basically what they were saying is they're like admitting to the fact that, yeah, we know it's a fumble, but we don't have any proper angles to really tell you if the dude that had the ball before another guy might have stripped it away from him illegally, so we can't make the call. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, because if you've ever talked to a player about what happens in those things, about, things getting pulled and twisted and tough, then you know that, more often than not, the guy who recovered the fumble is probably not the guy coming out of the pile with it anyway.
That's right.
So to suddenly arbitrarily decide this is the one where we're going to say we don't know who came out of the ball, that seems silly. Again, to me, the clear fumble recovery is for the play that you blew dead or you should have blown dead or half the guys didn't realize it was a fumble, not for a scrum like that.
All right, we have 2 or 3 minutes left, so I'm going to go quick. Urban Meyer, is he ever coming back?
To college,
or
not
pro?
To the NFL. To college.
Oh, you think he is coming back to college?
I do. Yep, to college, not to the NFL. Yep.
Notre Dame, he wants that job?
Yeah, coaches are coaches, especially the great ones. He'll take a couple years. We've seen it with him before. Yeah, he'll be back in college football.
Okay. And again, is Notre Dame the job?
If Notre Dame will allow him to get in his recruits, same thing that, was the problem 15 years ago when he wanted to leave Utah for Notre Dame and went to Florida instead.
Okay.
Notre Dame's going to say, if Notre Dame's going to tell him you can get in some of the kids you want to get in that don't meet our academic standards, I think he would love that job. If not, then I think he won't put himself in a situation where he can't recruit the players he wants to recruit.
Who do you like? College football playoffs?
Alabama. I hate to be boring, but Alabama just has the best team. Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback, but Alabama has the best team.
All right, I'm going to go with Clemson.
Okay.
And I think the Notre Dame game will be closer than 20. I just think that line is ridiculous.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I would take Bama.
I mean, Florida scored a lot. Florida's offense looked pretty damn good against Alabama.
It did. But Florida's offense has a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback and a top 10 caliber tight end. I don't know that Notre Dame has those.
Doug Peterson, we talked about him about 2 weeks ago. He comes out and says that he's pretty confident he's coming back. You think he'll be back with the Eagles?
I don't. I do not.
And
no.
if he doesn't come back, what we talked about 2 weeks ago could then come to fruition where he could then be the head coach of the Jets.
I agree. Yep. I think that's very possible. Certainly on the interview list.
Yep. And then finally, the NFL is going to expand to 17 games.
Yeah.
Good,
like
bad.
I said, I think it's good for the playoffs. It's bad for the regular season. Like I said a little bit ago, the values week 17. Oh, you're sorry. It expands to sorry.
17
I was
games.
thinking the playoff. Yeah, 17 games. I don't really care. Honestly, I don't really care. Good, bad. It's just another week of them making money. I don't know that it's good or bad for the players. I guess it's another week of wear and tear, but they'll get more revenue out of it. For the fans, it's another week of football, so I guess that's good. But 16, 17 games, I don't know that it really matters. What do you think?
I of course, I'm right there with you. I'd love it that anytime you can get another week of football is great.
Yeah.
Don't care how much it pushes into the February. That makes no sense. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
What I would have preferred, though, is, well, maybe you'd have an extra, maybe you now, like we just talked about, maybe you now increase the buys, add in a couple of more playoff teams instead of adding another game. But they've already made that decision.
Yeah, it does. 16 games, 17 games doesn't really matter to me. So.
All right, Ryan, next week we will wrap it all up because the season will be over. The regular season, we'll have a playoff preview show to talk about, so that should be a lot of fun. Appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you then.
Sounds good.